We'll bring our meeting to order. Welcome to the Wednesday, June 25th, 2025 meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of Liberty Lake. We'll begin with our roll call, please.
Joe Mann,
Here.
Tom Sahlberg,
Here.
Jim Baumker,
Here.
DG Garcia,
Here.
Charlie Jenks,
Here.
Dell Robbins,
Here.
Phil Foyer,
Here.
Gene Huschel,
Here.
and Troy Molinix.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We will begin if you would join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin with reviewing the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Jenks. Second. Second, Commissioner Foyer. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Minutes. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes. Any changes or issues with the minutes? Entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve. That's
Commissioner Jenks, Commissioner Robbins, second. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll get into our workshops, the greenhouse gas sub-element goals and policies.
I'm going to stop the share so that Beth can share her screen. You ready, Beth?
Yep, I think Maddie, are you gonna pop it up? You got it ready?
Now, if I can find my unmute button. All right, can everyone see that now?
Yes, ma'am.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you. Okay, hello, commissioners. My name is Maddie Cheek, and I am back with Parametrics crew, including Beth Miller, my colleague here. Last time we were here, we reviewed the draft goals for the greenhouse gas sub-element of the climate element. And today we're going to add one more layer of detail and review the draft goals and policies all together. So as we review these items, please keep in mind that at the end of the presentation, we will be asking you all if you're willing to recommend that the council approve these draft goals and policies for commerce review and pre-approval. This won't be the last time you see them. We will bring back kind of the whole package in the fall, but we are planning to submit for pre-approval. I think we're still on track for that, Lisa. And the added benefit of that is that if Commerce approves the pre-approves the greenhouse gas sub-element, the agency will defend the decision before the Growth Management Hearings Board in case it were to be appealed. So just a little extra cushion there, just in case. We've got a short and sweet agenda, but a lot to cover within it. So we'll do a quick refresher on the greenhouse gas sub-element requirements and how we put it all together. Then we'll spend the bulk of the time reviewing the draft greenhouse gas emissions goals and policies, and then discuss next steps. So the background piece that I mentioned before we dive in, just how we developed these goals and policies, we considered many things in this process. First was the emissions inventory findings, which tell us what the largest sources of emissions are in Liberty Lake, so that we focus on the sources that are bigger and less on kind of small potatoes sort of things. Second piece there is what emissions remain after state policies are considered. This tells us what emissions we need to focus on within the local context as a result of the state policies that have been set in motion. And then we also looked at the menu of measures, which is the list of pre-approved measures for the climate element developed by the Department of Commerce. We sifted through these, identified measures that seemed like they'd be relevant to Liberty Lake, and then tailored those further based on feedback from the CPAT, city staff, one-on-one interviews, and feedback from you all on the draft goals last time we were here. The greenhouse gas inventory identified buildings, transportation, and waste as the largest sources of emissions in Liberty Lake. pretty standard for a community. And Commerce requires that the city's greenhouse gas sub-element reduces overall emissions and per capita vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. So the draft goals and policies in the greenhouse gas sub-element were developed in accordance with best practices for reducing emissions from buildings, transportations, and waste, and then reducing VMT as well. And those are shown on the screen here. We'll get into a little bit more detail on those in a little bit. In terms of how the climate element is structured, the triangle on the left is showing us how it kind of fits together. We've got our broad goals on the top of the triangle. We've got sub goals in the middle. Those are a little bit more specific and tailor the goals to align with best practices to reduce emissions from different sectors. And then the policies at the bottom there are what we're going to focus on today. They're the most specific, and they provide information about how the goals or sub goals could be accomplished based on what the city's implementation levers are, which are shown on the right. So those implementation levers include incentivizing, for example, by reducing permit fees for desired actions, educating the community through events and outreach, collaborating or partnering with other regional governments or agencies. So for example, the transit agency would potentially be a partner here, supporting and advocating for greenhouse gas reduction, leading by example by implementing efficiency for the city's properties and facilities, and then updating planning documents as well. All right, so this is the last little background bit here before we get into the draft policies. But like I mentioned, we've been looking at best practices for each emission source, and just wanted to remind folks of what those are. So for building energy, the best practices to reduce include efficiency improvements and renewable energy use. Efficiency improvements can come from things like weatherization, so improving insulation or upgrading windows and roofs to keep heat in or keep cool in if that's what you're dealing with this time of year. Energy efficient appliances. So for example, switching from a natural gas furnace to a heat pump when the gas furnace reaches the end of its useful life. This is because heat pumps are significantly more efficient. And then also looking at building size. Smaller buildings just require less energy to heat and cool, and therefore result in less use of energy and lower emissions. And then on the renewable energy front, we're really talking about local solar here. Now, you have all of these draft policies in your packet, and I did want to check with you all and with Lisa to see what the best way you think is to review them, because I can either kind of read through all of these and sort of pause. It's a little bit tricky because I can't quite see everyone in the room, or I can read the goals and sub goals, give you some time to react or respond, and then move forward that way. Any thoughts from folks in the room?
I think I'm seeing some people nodding their head on the second one. If you read,
That's what I thought.
go page by page. I'll let you know if I'm seeing a reaction or not seeing a reaction. Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. Yes, I would really appreciate the assistance here. Awesome. Okay, so for buildings and energy, under this goal, we've got 4 sub goals here. So the overall goal is to encourage buildings to use renewable energy, conserve resources, and implement efficient technologies and practices to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For sub goals, we've got increased community awareness of energy efficiency measures and benefits. So really leaning into that education lever. And then the second sub goal here is making existing buildings more efficient. So I'll pause there and see if there are any comments on the policies under those.
DG?
Under the make existing buildings more energy efficient, I think I spoke.
Can you speak into your microphone, please?
Under make existing buildings more energy efficient, I think I spoke with you folks not too long ago, talking about cool roofs, using that upper level to keep the buildings cool. It cools down the climate. It has a number of benefits when used in any construction, whether it's new or old. So I think if we looked into doing some of that as new buildings are erected, that we can bring down some of those hotspots in our community. And even if they use them in new builds on homes, when building a new construction or retrofitting old construction.
Wouldn't that fit into policy 1.2.3?
Not.
Yes, potentially, or potentially,
Doesn't cover new builds.
Yeah, right.
so we might want to add a policy to sub goal 1.3 also related to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I wonder if 1.2.3 is sort of envisioned as encompassing a whole suite of different kinds of things. And either you can spell them out here, or maybe put examples in this policy, or you can leave that to the like implementation phase of this, you know, in the case of, you know, what gets incentivized, what are the measures that homeowners can take when applying for permit fee reduction or something like that. So you could take it either way. It might be helpful to have them in there as examples, or you might just leave it to the implementation to spell out exactly which energy efficiency measures make the most sense.
Thoughts?
I have a question. Lisa, I see on, like, for example, on policy 1.3.1, it talks about incentivize. And that's in 3 other locations on this page. What is meant by incentivize? Is it, we talking grants? Are we talking tax credits? Are we talking, what are we talking?
Well, in the case of the levers that the city has, we don't have a lot other than incentivizing through fee reductions for desired actions. But the others involve partnerships with entities that may have programs. SNAP has some programs. There's a variety of different, Avista has some programs, et cetera. So promoting, educating, coordinating with other partner agencies that actually have more levers than the city does.
So if someone, let's say, has like I have, a regular gas HVAC system for heating and air conditioning, and Bubba wants to come in and replace it with a heat pump, he'd have to pull I presume a plumbing permit, because it's a mechanical change.
Mechanical only, yes.
What about looking at ways to, let's say, incentivize people to do that by eliminating the permit fee?
Those are the types of things. Those are
That's
policies.
what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about, those types of things.
Okay.
The city doesn't have a lot of tools in their tool belt, but that's one of them.
Like that, they could do.
Yes, that's an example of incentivizing. And as we get into implementing these policies and building programs around them, we can provide more definition to specifically what those look like. And obviously that's going to require some action by city council. But at this point, the policies are kind of laying the foundation, just like other goals and policies lay the foundation for subsequent development development code. This could lay the foundation for subsequent fee schedules, subsequent programs.
This is adopted, then you could then modify the development code to address incentives for permitting, for example.
Or probably more the fee schedule, but yeah,
Okay.
but that's the concept, yes.
Go back to the previous page. Under education. Educational workshop, you talk about energy fair. I'm not quite sure what an energy fair is, but regardless. You might want to consider there are now builders in the area. They're building these net zero construction. And those builders in the area would be very familiar with the cost benefits of some of the things that they're putting into their net zero construction. Maybe to have, I don't know if the city can do that, but if the city and part of the education/energy fair reach out to some of these builders that do the net zero to have them prepare presentations for the
Yeah, so
community.
that's the concept for the Energy Fair Town Hall, is that
Okay.
we're gonna have a lot of different resources. We'll have resources including some of the agencies that provide for the home weatherization programs and whatnot. We would include information about solar. We would include information about heat pumps. Again, keep in mind, when you look at our policies, we're also looking at the example being heat pumps, is that we're not recommending that people just swap them out. But when their equipment reaches useful life, to look at more energy efficient options and to incentivize those. So having different information, there's a program online that you can play with where you plug in your address and it will tell you what the ROI is for solar on your roof. And so, and it's going to be different in different locations, precisely because of how your house is oriented, et cetera, those sorts of things, how much surface area you have potential for solar panels, those types of things. So it's different for everyone, what that looks like in terms of the ROI. But one of the things that we feel like everybody can get behind is the concept that being more energy efficient is beneficial, not just for the community and for the environment, but for their pocketbooks. So anyhow, so that's kind of the thought behind that.
Madam Director, I have two questions. And it pertains to subgroup 1-4-1 and 2. This is reference to dark sky certification and the conversion of energy efficient lights. Are those mandated, state mandated programs?
Converting to LED lights?
Yes.
So it's a practicality thing. LEDs are rapidly becoming the most available, and over time, the sodium lights are going to no longer be available. Again, it's a useful life kind of swap out that you want to make sure, but it's a huge energy savings to have LED lights over the old sodium, and plus it's a more aesthetically pleasing light.
Okay, but it's also like 5 times as expensive.
Well, yes and no. You know, if you look at the life cycle cost, it is more expensive to purchase the bulbs, but the useful life is much longer.
Okay. The other piece is, are the other bulbs still available to purchase? In other words, is there a federal mandate or a state mandate that says we must convert to LED lights?
Beth, do you know the answer to that question? I'm not there. I think that what we're seeing is the market's driving that. I'm not sure that there's actually a mandate, but the market's definitely driving it.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely a market push, whether or not things are available. I haven't seen, certainly there's nothing included in the climate element that is requiring this kind of switch out. But it is sort of what they call low hanging fruit, right? It's like, it's cheaper and it saves energy. So it turns out to be sort of a win-win kind of thing.
So the result is we have a choice. When it comes to converting, we have
Yes.
choices.
Yes.
Okay. And then what is dark sky?
So we already have a dark sky ordinance per se. We have, we followed the model dark sky ordinance when we developed our lighting standards. But you can take it to another level, which is dark sky certification. And again, the concept is that you're avoiding light trespass. so you're concentrating where the lighting is going more, and you're avoiding upglow. And so those two things are the major components of dark sky. I lived in upstate New York. I lived in a small town where, and it was rural, suburban kind of town. And about a mile from my house was a 12-pump gas station. And the glow from this thing, it's crazy. I mean, you couldn't see it because of the trees, but you could certainly see it lit up the sky. That's the kind of thing. And if you think about it, that's a lot of wasted energy to provide lighting that's actually a negative impact.
Okay, and I understand. And my point here is though, that if we are dark sky certified, will that subsequently impinge on contractors building, i.e. Topgolf facilities here?
So they are still required to get a dark sky certification. We did the same thing with the hub's outside fields. They were able to get dark sky certified for the expansion of their field and the lighting that they were using. So so this is something that it's an additional level of analysis, but it's certainly, I do not have a lighting expert on my staff. We stretch when we in writing the code, and implementing the code was a stretch for us. There are people that are lighting engineers that this is all they do.
Okay,
And so by having the certification, there's also the value of having somebody who's smarter than I looking at the lighting plans.
okay, so that makes it a little bit more complicated. And also, it's very subjective in the sense that there's not a federal standard or a state standard that we would have to comply with.
Well, but the dark sky certification is a standard. It's kind of like, it's the lead certification for lighting. How's that?
Okay.
It is not subjective.
Okay,
When you talk about those certifications, what about commercial parking lots?
Well, so we already have a standard, we already have standards that if they're built to our code, they should meet the dark sky
And
certification.
if they don't,
Well, again,
there's,
one of the things, we could have someone who has more knowledge than my staff on lighting, look at our code and help us tweak it to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
good, thank you.
It was a suggestion. I'm not even sure who suggested it now. I'm not sure if that came from the
It
committee.
came up in the CPAT meeting.
Okay.
And the idea that was that you were already pretty close, right? You had developed your lighting codes already based on this, but it just didn't quite get across the finish line of getting that like shiny sticker. And we're a tree city and we're dark sky certified. So it was like just a tiny bit of extra effort to show that, you know, Liberty Lake is a place where you can see the stars too. Like, so that's really the idea
asking if there's any, I'm not gonna call enforcement, but who knows if any of the parking lots, commercial parking lots, meet the city codes? Or
We have to review them, all the new ones. The old ones, the older code it was a little bit more nebulous to interpret. The lights had to be fully cut off. And so that's anyhow, long story short is that was one of the reasons why we updated our lighting code, is because it was very.
wasn't clear.
It wasn't clear and it was very dated. So anything new going forward is meeting it, and we're reviewing it. We have to review the photometric analysis. We have to get the bug ratings for the exterior lighting to be able to determine whether or not it meets these. And this is a standardized thing. So
Okay.
it's not this is not a subjective thing. We looked to the specs for the lights to tell us if they're meeting it or not.
Lisa, who issues the certification?
There's a dark sky organization. I can't remember, do you,
Oh, that's
Beth, do
fine.
you remember the name of the
It's
organization?
Dark Sky International.
Okay, Dark Sky International, there you go.
Thank you.
My question is, does this belong under the greenhouse gas reduction sub-element? This has nothing to do with greenhouse gases.
That's-
Just a little bit in
that's-
terms of reducing lighting electricity usage. So it does reduce emissions from electricity usage.
The light itself.
Hmm.
Any other comments on this page?
LED is going away.
Oh, Jean says LED is going away. What's the new technology?
There isn't one. There is not one. The cost of LED lights is extraordinary high. And the durability is also really far, far, far understated than what's commercially broadcast to people. And also LEDs are not able to be commingled with regular lights. Depends upon the number of LED lights versus the number of incandescent lights that you have. It's quite complex.
Next slide, I guess, next page.
All right, so the next goal is to promote solar electricity generation and storage, my bad. There are 3 sub goals under this category. So we've got this kind of spanning 2 pages again here. Sub goal 2.1 is install solar on public buildings, and sub goal 2.2 is promote solar on private buildings. I'll just flip over to the next page to read the third, and then we can discuss. The third one here is increase small scale battery storage to pair with local solar generation.
I have a question for the consultant. What is the do you have any idea what the penetration is in Liberty Lake with regard to solar installation on residential structures or commercial structures? How much is there? Is it really viable? When I first saw this in the first iteration of this, I chuckled to myself because I had someone contact me about installing solar on my house. And when I pushed back, tell me more about it, what's in it for me in terms of saving money, they disappeared. So is this really, this idea of solar here in Liberty Lake, given where we live, is it really a viable idea?
So it actually is, we're seeing it a lot on new construction, and it's really helping the contractors meet their energy code requirements. So we're seeing it a fair bit. We also are seeing retrofitting. A lot of it depends upon the location and orientation of your house, how much coverage you have. The ROI for every home is a little bit different. I looked at solar panels for my home and found that the ROI wasn't there. It was a 25-year payback. But I've looked at other locations, other homes in my neighborhood that they had a 12 or 15-year ROI. And that makes some sense because we also know that electricity costs are not going to go down. That is a certainty. Death taxes and utility bills.
Yeah, and I would say that, was it Greenstone that we had at our building energy workshop?
Yeah, they were one of the developers, yes.
Yeah, so we had developers at a workshop that we held earlier in this process in the winter. And we were told that they were putting it in, they were like, yeah, we're putting solar on everything.
We know that Lennar is, we know that Greenstone is. Other developers,
Are they doing it because they think it's a good idea, or are they doing it to be in compliance with the electrical codes?
so it's not a requirement to do solar. the energy code, requires that you get a certain score or a certain rating. And so you get that a variety of different ways. One of the easiest ways for them to meet the energy code, and still keep their gas appliances is to
Install panels.
install panels, yes. Is that, and you're in the business, is that a correct statement?
You gotta max out on the solar, because everything, all your other options are way more expensive. And the return on the investment, in my opinion, is just not there. Technology's not there, like you said. So every home's gonna have solar on it, and
Whether it works or not, isn't any benefit.
Well, it does
Well,
work and there is benefit. The question is, how long are you gonna recover the cost of the
right,
investment?
and you can't put it, you won't get the energy credit if you put it on the wrong side of the house. And that's part of the problem with some of these homes is they're not facing the proper direction, or they don't have enough roof surface.
Right.
Right? But when you submit your permit, or when you submit your paperwork in the very beginning on day one, you have to have all that worked out, otherwise the building department won't approve it. Yeah,
We can't approve it.
exactly. So it's site specific, but for the cost, for the maximum 4.5 energy credits, when a house up to 5,000 square feet, you need 8. That's over half. Because you get 0 for gas.
Mhm.
So it's a big ask. It's not cheap.
Well, honey,
Well, I will say this, there's one other comment to make. And that is that, and it speaks more to the sub goal, sub goal on the next page, 2.3. But one of the things is that there is a much greater ROI if you have battery storage. But right now, battery storage is still relatively expensive, and there are better ways to do it than doing it via individual home. Is that a fair statement, Beth or Maddie?
There's definitely value in having it on the individual home, but it can really stabilize your grid to have it on sort of a microgrid level as well.
Which is one of the reasons why we're suggesting that we work with Avista to do just that. And Avista was one of the stakeholders in our meetings as well.
However, and this goes to the CPAD discussions, Avista is not incentivizing this at all right now until 2031. They're not looking into it. They're not investing into it. I have 43 solar panels. You're correct. It's not something I'm getting return on investment right now. But for me, it's probably going to be 12 years. I have quite a few panels and I had really good exposure so far. You got to decide where you're going to spend your money.
Mhm.
And the battery backup, that was supposed to be an incentive that Vista in one of their workshops or one of their presentations said that they were going to start doing, and they're not.
And
It's not, it's no money, there's no money in it for them. So going to your point is what's in it for me? If everything is what's in it for me, then we're never going to get anywhere. So
one of the things, and this is just kind of a curious situation, I think, and Avista has said this, and in fact, in a meeting that we had just the other day, they're not incentivizing anything that the state is now requiring, or in the case of solar panels, they don't require it, but and so there are still some incentives, but again, the way the energy code is written, it makes it very difficult to meet the energy code without adding the solar panels. So it's almost a de facto requirement.
if I have a breakdown, Vista comes out and tells me you've got a breakdown. We're not getting the power that you were putting into the grid.
Mhm.
Actually, it was a benefit and it was all covered. So
You know, there's and I thought Avista was promoting it, but maybe it was some other utility, the idea of a community solar bank.
oh, not a Vista.
Yeah, it's where
Promise.
homeowners collectively contract with the builder with respect to a community solar panel.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there would be opportunities where you have homes where it's not conducive because of location. You know, if you had the concept of a community solar panel farm, say covering the parking lots at City Hall, or the parking lots at any of the subdivision, or excuse me, any of the storefronts, things like that.
It's not, it would be no different than, an energy cooperative, and so. you
Yes,
put-
I guess that's what it would be.
You're gonna, it's called Solar Acres.
Yeah,
That's his business.
That's yeah, and actually, when I grew up in Pennsylvania, we were members of an electric co-op.
but is there, what's the incentive for for an individual homeowner to join that type of organization?
So
How
again,
do-
I
yeah.
would think that it would be, you would have to. there
Would you
have-
get credit back to your utility bill based upon that collective?
That would be my understanding, yes, but again, that would have to be something that would be worked out with Avista in advance.
And anything that you produce that's more than you use, that's credited to you throughout the year. So that,
But, and the other thing is from a resiliency standpoint, we're not talking resiliency right now, but from
Yeah.
a resiliency standpoint, having that, having the battery backup also, helps that, grid, that mini grid that you've created be at least resilient when there are, power outages.
and if they brought the price down on that, or if they incentivized, if Avista was to provide that, that'd be a real benefit. They're not doing it. It's about $10,000 right now.
I'll just add to the conversation, the battery bank idea with the with the way this is going right now, everything's going electric. All the way down to you gotta put a car charging port in your garage, a 600 amp, furnace, these heat pumps, water tanks, they're all electric. Right? For the 4.5 credits, energy credits you get for, with the, that you need to do to even get a building permit, that only produces 2,700 amp hours. Not anywhere near enough to provide enough power for those appliances I just rattled off. So this is not, this is a supplement. It's not the solution. But I think the idea here is it's a coordinated effort amongst a bunch of different avenues or ways to save on energy, be more efficient on energy. But no, not any one of these is the fix all.
Well, and that's, so that's one of the things, in fact, we talked about that a little bit at CPAT.
We did.
And for those of you who don't know, I used to be a garbage geek and I developed an integrated solid waste management plan for a community in upstate New York and implemented a curbside recycling program. And that was one of the things is we were looking at the solid waste management plan. Everybody was looking for the silver bullet for the single stream. It's not a single stream. It's multiple streams. And the only way to to manage solid waste is to address the different garbage streams that make up the waste stream. And the same is true here. We're gonna have to attack this from a variety of different fronts to be at all effective. So, DG.
So when we present things like this, are we going to be presenting it, or whomever, in a transparent way, advising that this is not the cure-all? This is our first step. There are many more steps that we'll be able to get to, but not leave anyone thinking, whoa, we've got this all covered. I'm gonna go this route because of what they said.
I think that's a very good point. These are goals and policies. Goals and policies are different from implementation strategies. They just lay a foundation. We have a long way to go, and one of the things we will have to include is kind of our implementation strategies. We do have some things some high-level next steps that are based upon goals and policies, both in this and the resiliency chapter, that we are going to be proposing because they're things that the community is most concerned about. And so, I mean, we're a small city with a small staff. So we're gonna have to take this on piece by piece, bit by bit. The first step is just having a strategy for how we're going to start to make a difference. And it's a process. It's. Any other comments on our goal 2?
I just have one, actually. We refer to a Vista in here a couple times. Just so everybody is aware, when you're dealing with solar, you deal with the individual utility company. It's not just a Vista in the. Well, is it just a Vista for the city?
It is just for us.
For Liberty Light, yeah.
Liberty Lake it
That's
is.
fine.
It's not
This
like-
is one of the few, areas where we have one solar.
I just
provider.
realized that maybe it is just Liberty
Yeah,
Lake.
it is.
So, I have the luxury of dealing with all of them, so.
I'm sorry.
Anyhow, sorry. Moving right along.
All right. Beth, are you taking over from this point or do you want me to keep going?
I think we had me at 15, but I'm happy to take over if
Oh.
you're done.
It looks like, I don't know, things got a little moved around, but that's okay. Okay, so for VMT reduction, we're really talking about land use, active transportation, and public transit as our best practices for reducing VMT. Land use changes, really focusing on increasing mixed use development areas. And I know this is already ongoing with current zoning requirements in Liberty Lake. And then for active transportation, we're really trying to enable people to travel safely and comfortably on foot or by bike. And I know that this is pretty well established in Liberty Lake as well. So it would just kind of look like expanding the existing network or filling gaps to ensure that folks feel comfortable getting around using those means. And then for public transit, obviously the transit system already exists and does serve Liberty Lake. So it's more of a matter of continuing to work with Spokane Transit to improve service frequency and reliability. These kinds of things dovetail with other planning efforts that are ongoing. And most of them are not GHG reduction measures alone, but support of other efforts. So for goal 3, we've got reduce vehicle miles traveled to achieve greenhouse gas reduction goals. The first sub goal there is foster high intensity land uses in mixed use development and transit corridors. I will pause there for comment.
Yeah, how did you use cell phone data to get to the VMT numbers you came up with? How does that work?
Yeah, we have basically a contract with a company that uses that. So that's like their whole, it's called Replica. They use cell phone signals to sort of anonymously track trips made around the town. And then they convert those into sort of average weekday and weekend VMT within a defined border. So it's sort of a GIS based thing where you can sort of draw a circle around it and say, this is what I want to know about the VMT for, and it will spit out the values.
I will say this about that it used to be that best practices in developing metropolitan transportation plans and models were to use to do surveys. Today, the best management practice is to use this cell phone data. And so that this is the best available data.
So if you had an analog city of a similar size.
Is there an analog city in this country?
Is there? I don't know. Maybe there is. Seattle?
Wyoming.
Maybe, yeah.
Montana.
Little Rock, Arkansas. The VMT numbers that you're coming up with, are they fairly consistent? Do you see any strange variations, or are we pretty much where we should be with VMT?
For Liberty Lake, it's a little bit strange, right? Because you've got this giant freeway going through, you know, the top third. So so it takes a little bit of finagling to get the right numbers that really represent Liberty Lake. I think the thing to focus on here is not whether it's precisely right, but whether you can see a change with a change in behavior. Because I think that is probably the most useful way to look at it is change. And I would just like to say that the regional transportation group was in the process of doing their sort of local estimation, and I'm not even sure where that is at the moment. But that's
The model was
forthcoming.
finally adopted.
Oh, it did finally get adopted. So there will be more. So this was sort of like, well, if we can't get local data, we will make our best estimate this way. There's also like state level data that they provide, but it doesn't, it's not subdivided in a useful way.
Do you incorporate some kind of fudge factor for the fact that we've got I-90 going down to the middle of the city? Do you incorporate some kind of a change factor with regard to VMT, recognizing that a lot of the trips just aren't going from their house in beautiful downtown Liberty Lake to the pizza place? You got people going on I-90 to go almost anywhere.
Right. I would have to look back and look at exactly what the calculations were to remember. It was a while ago that we did it, so I don't feel totally comfortable telling you exactly what we did because it's been a while. And I don't know if you remember, Lisa, either whether we decided to incorporate I-90 or try to cut it out. We don't have like
My
a really
recollection
way
is
to
that
take
we
it out.
we tried to isolate that out. But
Yeah.
again, Beth's point, what we're not really as concerned about the total vehicle miles traveled per capita as we are the delta in that. And one of the things, Liberty Lake does have a lot going for it. It's got a higher percentage of people who actually work from home. It also has a much more active multimodal component. We also have a lot more mixed use, and we're moving more in that direction clearly. And the more mixed use we have, the more likely people are to choose other modes of transportation other than an automobile. So as we continue in our build out of our mixed use areas, I think we're going to see a lot of change. So again, the requirement is that we look at the reduction piece, how we reduce it. And not so much, it's not about the total miles, it's about how we can achieve some reduction in the vehicle miles traveled per capita.
A question relative to the use of city vehicles. That's not included in here in any way, shape, or form, is it?
Beth, I'm gonna let you answer that.
Well, so are you wondering about the sort of driving of city vehicles around town? Like reducing VMT from that. We do have a section at the end on fleet. So the city owned vehicle fleet conversion to EVs. So
Yeah.
to reduce emissions from that.
Yes. In other words, there's a program afoot to go ahead and reduce the number of gas consuming vehicles. And then say like on the golf course, we would only require electric golf carts
That's
instead of some of the ones with propane.
someday.
In about 9 years.
So it's
Right.
not,
At end of natural life.
it's addressed somewhere else.
Mhm.
Yes, it's addressed at the end under, we'll get there, but under what this is things that the city can do internally, leading by example. So you see, city operations is goal number 9, so.
And I'll say, just as an aside, if you need to get a Tesla, buy it by the end of the month. Because you can buy a little Tesla 3 for $325 a month, nothing down. A 3-year lease. Now that's almost impossible to beat from a transportation standpoint. That's an incentive, of course, that Tesla's put out, and they'll continue to put those things out, particularly from a fleet standpoint.
So any more comments on goal 3? We've got 9 goals to get through, guys, and it's almost 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
These are the hard ones, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, any comments on, we've got increased housing diversity and supply within the urban growth area to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support environmental justice, partner with Spokane Transit Authority and support improvements to public transit reliability and convenience. And then I'll flip over to the last sub goal here just to make sure that we cover it. But that sub goal is to improve the active transportation network. Any last comments on goal 3 before we move along?
One of the things that I want to be clear about is that this particular goal is really just recognizing things that we're already doing as a city. And that we're trying to promote, because we're already doing these things and continuing to do them and continuing to increase will help us continue to reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita. I'm not seeing any other comments. Are we ready to go on to goal 4?
Okay, so once we have, or as in the meantime, as we're reducing vehicle miles traveled, there's a lot of other transportation emissions there's still going to be wheels on the road, right? So these goals are targeted at reducing emissions from the driving that still needs to happen. So the first one is increase EV adoption, right? So we need to, and a lot of this, EVs are things that people buy themselves, as you noted. You can choose to go out and lease a Tesla. But there are actions that people take to make it a little bit easier. So to increase EV adoptions, the sub goals under that are provide education about EVs, including about life cycle emissions and batteries and all of that kind of stuff. And then expand electric vehicle infrastructure. So that's charging, that is making sure that that's available to people when they need it, where they need it. Any notes on that goal 4? Okay.
Not seeing any.
All right. So the next goal is to explore opportunities for renewable diesel. So we've got passenger cars are pretty easy to electrify, right? We see them around. Diesel trucks are a little bit harder. There's some EVs, electric trucks on the market now, but it's sort of hard to come by. So this goal is sort of facing that reality that it's hard to electrify some of these other fleets. So the way to address those emissions is through using a lower emissions fuels. And so this goal is about renewable diesel, which is distinct from biodiesel. It is a low carbon fuel that is chemically equivalent to fossil diesel, that, the B5 or whatever you would get in a normal pump. This fuel can be used in any sort of normal diesel engine, and it's becoming increasingly available. It's not super available yet on your side of the state. However, when we talked to the Spokane tribe, they said that they were looking at opportunities to put it in their own pumps on the reservation. And I know about a few refineries that are coming online that are making it. There's one in Montana. There's one on the coast in on the mouth of the Columbia. So there's refineries around to produce this product. So this goal is really about keeping your eyes open. It's a city policy of making sure to acquire that when it becomes available.
I just had one question.
Sure.
How long, when's the next time we'll revisit this document?
So this, from here, this document goes to city council on, we're workshopping it on July 1st.
I mean, when's then, is it 5 years, 10 years?
So we have to do, in 5 years, we have to do an implementation evaluation. So we have to see where we are in 5 years. And then the comp plan itself won't be done for another 10 years.
Right, that's what I thought. So given the way technology is rolling these days, as when you talk about alternates for diesel blends, would you not want to just add another or alternate technology sources? I mean, do you want to, I'm just asking the question, do you want to just narrow this down to diesel blends, or do you want to open the goal for any new technology that comes in the next 10 years?
I think that's a great point. It might be worth separating them as separate sub-goals though, because it's a technology that exists today that just hasn't made it over to this side of the state. And it's getting great play on the west side and in the Portland area and whatnot, readily available. And it's plug and play. We just don't have any suppliers here right now.
Should, so just
So-
asking the question.
Yeah, so, but that's a great point that I almost feel like it would make more sense though to recognize the other technologies. And there is language in this chapter recognizing we don't hit, so I'm spoiler alert, we're not hitting the net zero that we're required to hit because we don't control enough levers. But we recognize that technology is going to give us the opportunity to really improve our targets over time. It just doesn't exist right now.
And the whole thing about net zero is the same as target zero for traffic fatalities. It's a goal, but it's not attainable, and it's certainly not enforceable. So
I don't make the suggestion to hold up the approval process today. I'm just, for the next 10 years, you don't have to.
that's right.
Is this goal something that our dear friends at the Department of Commerce are saying we have to include?
The renewable diesel blends?
Yes.
No, I don't think that they're saying that we have to include it. We're saying that this is really low hanging fruit. It's something that would be beneficial and easy. It's just the market just has to catch up, and it would have a big impact on a big impact on emissions as it relates to diesel fuels. It's not any more expensive. It's not anything other than it's just not available in our market yet.
And everything we're doing is awareness and education. It's not implementation.
Exactly.
Anyways, that's all I have. Like,
Okay.
Some that's I would be open to adding one more little policy in there. Keep an eye open for options for heavy duty vehicle electrification or hydrogen. There's options in the world.
Hydrogen fuel.
Yeah, hydrogen fuel. I think that we can have a future looking goal that says recognize we're looking for those other technologies to develop over time.
I love it.
I don't see how you get there with electric, so it's got to be some other source, especially
Absolutely.
in the heavy equipment.
Awesome. Good idea. All right, let's do the next one. All right, so the next goals are around natural spaces and local biodiversity, preserve existing trees, enhance fire resistant green space. If things burn down, they are no longer sequestering carbon. So this goal sort of covers a lot of things. And it also really strongly interacts with the resilience sub-element and the natural system sub-element as a part of this comprehensive plan. So I just want to note that, you know, each one of these sub-elements or elements is being developed, and, you know, later in the year, once all of the elements are at, you know, together at like a reasonable point, we can start braiding together the ones that interact really strongly to make sure that, you know, the plan makes sense combining all of the different elements. But right now we're looking at, you know, this one sort of in isolation and recognizing that there will be other elements that it pertains to. So, you know, eventually we're going to need to find like the perfect home for these policies, but they could be so the goal here is protect local biodiversity, such as fire-resistant trees, to boost carbon sequestration, reduce heat islands, improve air quality, prioritizing vulnerable and overburdened communities. Any notes on this?
Is there an education component here as far as educating what is a fire resistant tree, or what kind of trees make the most
Well,
sense?
so this, we just hired an urban forester, the city's first urban forester, Dan Mouse. He's pretty passionate about it. He will be helping us look at our street tree ordinance.
Oh, yeah?
He will be helping us with our landscape standards. He will be helping us take what we're doing right now to the next level.
Okay.
And so this lays a good foundation for that. After our last CPAT meeting, reached out to him. He's very excited to really get into some of the things that the CPAT was suggesting. He's very interested in partnering with the school and the AP class, the AP teacher, on these biodiversity.
Well, and if he
discussions.
gives some guidance to HOAs and things like that, as far as the best types of species of trees to go with.
Absolutely, and he's talking about developing brochures and educational materials to really promote that. So these are all things that will come out of this. Again, we're talking implementation strategies. So that's not necessarily reflected here right now, but we're already having those conversations.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. So, Hans, let's move on to emissions from waste and wastewater. Okay, so we can reduce emissions from basically waste reduction and better waste management. And then there's also, so that's sort of the solid waste, right? And then the wastewater, the strategy here is methane capture. That already happens sort of in your solid waste landfills. But in terms of the wastewater management system, which of course Liberty Lake as a city is not in charge of, but it can actually be quite a bit of benefit. You capture the methane, which is, once you've captured it, now it's renewable natural gas that you can use in place of fossil natural gas. So let's look at those goals and policies. So the overall goal is to develop targeted campaigns for reducing and managing waste to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so, so this is the education goal: provide education about reducing waste, like having people waste less food, reuse things more. So that's what this goal is really trying to capture, is that outreach surrounding just sort of reduction in waste in the first place. And then the next goal, goal 8, is about reducing emissions from the waste that gets generated. So reducing emissions from solid waste, and then reducing emissions from wastewater treatment. Any questions or comments on here? There's a lot, so that wastewater treatment is about, you know, encouraging and collaborating with the sewer and water district to to implement some methane capture?
So Beth, we have recently met with both Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District and the county sewer district, sewer. Specifically because we're going through the utilities and public facilities piece and trying to make sure that they have the capacity to support the population and housing growth that we're projecting. And one of the things that we learned in those conversations, Spokane County is already recapturing and using beneficial reuse in their own facilities, some of their methane. But there is a potential to expand that in the future, and they're looking at it and interested in that.
Cool.
Lake Sewer and Water District, on the other hand, they just updated their facility a few years ago, and they were basically updating a facility that was built in the 80s, and their holding tanks are concrete. And so what we learned from them is that it's not feasible for them to put a cap for their tanks because of the corrosive nature of the methane gas. And so because of the way it's constructed, it's not even a possibility. However, and the however is they did talk about the fact that one way that we could help reduce methane production is by overall reducing the amount by conserving water and reducing the amount of effluent that's going to the sewage treatment plant. And so I just thought I'd share that with you. This is really hot off the presses. Did we meet with them just earlier this week, or I think it was early. It was the end of last week or the beginning of this week, but anyhow. So these are hot off the presses news flashes for you. Sorry.
I'm surprised.
Do we need to change it then?
I think we do. I think we do.
Okay.
But we could recognize, encourage and support the counties implementing methane capture, and we could encourage and support water conservation in Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District as a means to reduce methane.
I'm surprised they can't capture the methane.
They can't. Constitute.
It would destroy their facility is what they're saying. It was just.
That's what they said.
Does the county have a green waste diversion program?
I don't know about the county. The city does, the city of Spokane does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can put my food waste in a green can. And I do. Yes.
I have a comment. I think I made it at a previous meeting. There's a lot of public stuff in here as far as education or working with waste management to figure out waste diversion like we're talking about. But I still don't see in here anywhere where it's a goal might be for the city to look at alternative waste disposal. Again, we're going to landfills right now, and landfills lead to the methane release and other problems. I would just personally like to see that as part of this. Could be a 1-sentence deal or.
The challenge is we're too small of a jurisdiction.
Oh, I understand the challenges and the cost. I'm just saying it. It'd be a nice goal to have, whether it's feasible or attainable, like we talked about in other things. Maybe not.
Are you talking about anaerobic digestion before the landfill, or are you talking about incineration?
Incineration specifically with this area. Since all of ours goes to the landfill, where maybe there are other alternatives.
So right now, the city of Spokane is the only one that is incinerating.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to take on other partners. And and we're too small of an entity to there is a waste stream size that is, there's a certain volume that is essential to be able to make it cost effective to incinerate and recapture the electricity. And it's something to the tune of 400,000 tons per day. So
It'll be a while before we get there.
I
But
Hopefully don't.
projection, I don't think.
No, but it could also piggyback off of like what Commissioner Foyer was saying about, technology in 10 years is going to change. So it doesn't have to be specific to, let's send our waste to the incinerator. Might just be a good goal or to look at, to continuously look at alternatives as technology advances. Other ways than landfill use.
Do you know why the city of Liberty Lake decided not to use the waste to energy facility?
So my understanding was that it was too costly at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Mhm. That's exactly right.
Okay,
Again, I don't think that it's a bad policy to, look to, alternative technologies for municipal solid waste in the future. And I know that, MSW composting in anaerobic is being done in some places, that it's being done in Minnesota. And, again, you need to do it as a region. There's no way that we could do this on our own, but as a region, we could start to look at alternatives. But we'll say this about that also is there's a lot of money to be made in garbage. And we've got some big players that are making a lot of money in garbage.
I'm experiencing a similar fight in my jurisdiction right now with anaerobic digestion, which is a out of the park greenhouse gas advantage. It's very, very big greenhouse gas winner. But even still, and it prolongs the life of your landfill. Even still, it's a big fight in terms of the garbage haulers.
What does waste management do with the stuff in the quote unquote clean green bin?
It gets composted.
And then what do they do with it?
They sell it, and I think there have been changes recently in Washington state law related to public works procurement, that we have to have a certain percentage of fill, that's a certain percentage of compost being used in our projects in Seville. So I mean, the state has been very progressive about making sure that we're creating markets for that compost.
Okay. So we're gonna maybe add sort of a forward-looking look for alternatives to landfill disposal in that goal 8. I like that. Okay. Goal 9 gets us to what can the city do? Reduce emissions from city operations. So the first one is reduce emissions. So this sort of follows the structure of all of the goals that came before. Sub goal 9.1, reduce emissions from city building and energy use. And so we've got the efficiency, we've got, is the solar in that one? Yeah, so we've got efficiency and solar and heat pump at time of natural replacement included in that sub goal. Any comments on that one?
I will just say that we met with Avista just yesterday, again, on the utilities side of the equation. And they offered up that they would love to partner with us on this piece, and that they have their, Michelle McCullum, who is the governmental relations person for our region of the county, is actually going to connect me with the person who runs those programs. So we will be looking at what some implementation strategies for this might be. So that's again, it's nice that we're having all these the synergy of the comprehensive plan. We're having all these conversations simultaneously and looking at opportunities to partner. So I think we could go a long way with this one. And we're also, as part of our capital facilities plan, as we look at the capital facilities going forward, there's a real opportunity for us to make certain that we're making good choices as we're retrofitting buildings.
Got a project in mind that's current?
Maybe one or two.
Okay, so the next goal is convert public fleets to zero emission vehicles and develop supporting infrastructure. So this is installing chargers, developing a plan to convert where possible. This might be improved maybe by less specific about EVs and stick to zero emissions in terms of things like hydrogen for heavier duty, but just with our previous conversation.
I will say about this, that this is really, these are the next steps that we need to take to move towards what Jean was talking about, which is really electrifying the city's fleet. I think that we can, I agree with you, we could add a goal, a forward-looking goal, but this is the short term, this is the next 5 years, things that we can do.
And one more goal in this, in the transportation part, which is to reduce emissions from employee commute. So this is things, you know, the goal is to make it so people can drive a little bit less when they're coming into work at the city. And then the next set of goals is on purchasing. So reduce emissions from city operations by purchasing lower carbon products and fewer new items. So this is also sort of reuse where possible. Lower carbon construction materials where they make the most sense. Those kinds of things.
I'm smiling, Beth, as you're saying this, because the city is a master at this. If anybody's ever had a meeting in our conference room, you know what I'm talking about. Those chairs have been reused so many times.
That's good.
Good.
First come, better chair too.
Yeah, the straggler always gets the trick chair.
Quick
Okay.
question on
Yeah.
sub goal 9.2, and maybe it's been discussed already, but slide versus what my handout says dedicated lanes for electric cars and buses. Has that been removed after charging stations?
Let me check and make sure.
I think that it just didn't get transferred from the handout to the slide. So I think the handout is the most up to date of these.
So explain to me how we're going to dedicate lanes for electric cars and buses in the roads we currently have.
So there actually is a plan for the Liberty Lake Park and Ride that is going to go off of Appleway Avenue. It's not going to get actually constructed until 2036 right now is the date. I think they're purchasing it in 2028 or 2029, but it's not actually getting constructed. But they are working with WashDOT to use the Green Acres flyover, that interchange, as to provide a lane, on ramp for their high performance transit line that is a dedicated lane. So this one actually has more to do with what with STA and what WashDOT can do on that than anything else. I don't see it being something that's feasible within the city streets themselves. But again, we are partners in supporting development of this high performance transit corridor along I-90.
You understand why I asked the question the way it reads. We're going to take a lane away from my big bad diesel and give it to electric cars and buses.
I'll wave as I go by.
Just not a big deal. Just thanks for the answer.
Okay. All right. All right, next slide, unless anybody's got anything else. Reduce emissions from city operations. Oh, we did that. Next slide. Oh, recycling. This is just expanding recycling at the city, making sure that those blue bins go to be recycled as people think they should be. So,
I have-
um,
Excuse me, I have one question on goals.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I would suggest that we have a component there identified to provide a backup source of power for the city operated vehicles in the event that we would lose power on a sustained basis. Sustained meaning 3 to 5 days. And what that would look like is probably some sort of a large battery type facility or a series of batteries for the different vehicles that we have.
So we did talk about
go up a couple more, Maddie.
we did talk about that in the EV, in promoting the EV section. There's a lot more about battery. There's
Fun.
related
One
to
more.
storage.
Right here, installed at 9.1.4. Does that address that?
No. And this is install distributed renewable energy generated battery infrastructure, public facilities, ensure continuity of operations, and provide emergency power. Wow, it does. Provide emergency power that ensures continuity of operations. I would be a little bit more specific though, and say that provides continuity of operations for a 3 to 5 day period, or something to identify, not necessarily just tonight, but to allow the city, particularly the police department, to continue operations and the fire department.
So the specifics of that should come out of the hazard mitigation plan that we're developing in our resiliency plans. I hesitate to get that specific in these goals and policies at this point in time, because I think that is part of the continuity of operations plan. That's a subset of that. I think it's a good point. I just think it's a little too down in the
Specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we've made it to the end. Any more questions? All right, the next slide is the kind of bad news, which is that this doesn't actually get us to 0, which is not surprising. I don't think I've seen a single community get to 0, although it gets quite a bit. It gets quite a bit. And so this is just sort of an estimation of where, these kinds of actions will take you.
There's a recognition, there is a recognition that the technology is going to change, that
Mommy, I'm hungry. I'm hungry.
Sorry.
Dinner time.
Together we
A
agree.
little electrical. in there.
the planning commission is nodding their heads, they are too. There's a recognition that the technology is going to change, the opportunities, the levers that we have available to us are likely to change over time. I think that's how we couch that in the report, so that, to recognize that we're not meeting what they say our target goal is, but it is realistic. Reasonably attainable.
Playing Minecraft.
Is there more?
Give her a second.
She's otherwise engaged.
Sorry, they're all from Slim Wessons. They're very hungry.
We agree with her.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Sorry.
so I guess just if you want to cut to the chase here, I think the planning commission is ready also. So
Yes, let's do it. Okay, so next step is to take this to city council and have them sort of provisionally approve these so that we can send it on to commerce so that they can look at it and rip it apart and tell us everything that's wrong and we change it. So it gives us an opportunity to sort of get a first pass to make sure we're doing what they want us to do. So we are hoping on the next slide that to see after reviewing all these draft goals and policies. Are you ready to approve it for us to take to city council? And then on to commerce.
I'll make a motion to recommend to city council the approval of the greenhouse gas sub-element goals and policies as presented.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Foyer and second by Commissioner Solberg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I am looking at the clock here and I think, thank you, Beth and Maddie.
Thanks, Beth.
Great time.
Thank
Both
you.
Kids.
What's for
So
dinner?
sorry for the interruption. Thank you
No,
for the good
We
discussion.
just want to know what's for dinner before you go.
I don't know, hot dogs. Bye.
Thank you.
Chicken strips.
So I'm going to turn it over to Amy now, who is, we can get started on the chapter. It may not take us that long, the urban design chapter. We may get through it. I will defer on a secretary's report if need be. And we can do a hard cutoff at 6 o'clock regardless of where we are and come back to it if we need to.
Okay. Good afternoon. We will try and breeze through this. So similar to what we did last week or last time with the natural environment, I did not prepare a second presentation. We're just going to go through the chapter with the changes and talk about them as we move along. So on this first page, we're just proposing to shorten the title and update the picture. Does anyone have any comments or feedback on the first page? Next page. So one thing that you are going to notice about this chapter is that there are a lot of red lines. There were a lot of sections that had me and Lisa kind of asking, what does this mean? So if we asked that question and it directly supported a goal or policy or was clear the connection that it was trying to make, then I did my best to kind of try and reword it to be a little bit more succinct. And if we asked that question and I could not directly tie it to a goal and policy, then we proposed removing it. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I am going to point out, I am going to point out the things that I think I would like you to know. If you have anything else you'd like to add, please stop me before I move on to the next page. So again, this is really just a rewrite of the existing. I tried to keep the intent of what was there, but just make it a little bit more succinct. I called out down there at the bottom that this is the area that once we've completed our urban design survey that we're doing at our summer engagement, that this is where we would kind of put a summarization of those efforts and what we kind of mean by community character. Does anyone have any comments or feedback on this page? Page 3. Page 3 is, again, the little section that I added right here is just a distilled rewrite of these bottom 2 paragraphs. Again, I tried to keep the intent of what it was trying to say and just make it a little bit, use a little bit less words. So, does anyone have any comments on this page?
Yeah, Amy, I think the last paragraph on that page that's crossed out
Mm-hmm.
is actually okay
Okay.
to include. This is my opinion.
Okay. Any other thoughts or feedback?
What does that add? What does it add?
Yeah, it doesn't add anything to what's there. It's just a lot of verbiage, in my opinion.
I don't think so. I think it's kind of adds to the character, describes the character of the city, which I think is good.
Does anyone else have an opinion on that? It's easy to, it's just as easy for me to keep it in as it is for me to delete it, but this
I'd
is.
like the deletion.
Others, other thoughts? Well, I can see what Charlie's saying, but if it were included in the second paragraph, because in that second paragraph where it is included, it does describe what's in the last paragraph, or it attempts to. It attempts to, in a way that having that, sometimes nuances, little teeny things kind of are just fluff and you don't need it. However, when it says the city recognizes the importance of design standards and development criteria that are sensitive to both aesthetics and the environmental needs as a catalyst for enhancing the city's economic base, a variety of architectural styles, materials, and colors can be supported. When you merge that paragraph into that, other what it kind of spells out, what are we doing other than just be more academic? You know, a little. That's just my opinion, and it doesn't. It would enhance it. It was moved up and improved in that second. But again, that's a half of an opinion on why I think Charlie's opinion was a good one. It's more than just words. It really does describe it as community character.
And it promotes inclusion.
Yeah, it's kind of a philosophical statement.
Yeah. We need some of that, so it's not so academic. But also, no, not a deal breaker. Leave it in, take it out.
I'd vote to keep it too.
But just understand, this is a plan. This is not a novel. We're not creating
No, yeah,
word pictures here.
no, it's not enough.
Yeah, it's just a plan.
It's just a plan, but
Let us plan, okay?
in a plan, there are some very ordinary people reading it. And therefore, this document, the plan that somebody reads, we want to ensure, or at least I'm attempting to ensure that all of the readers are gleaning something, or taking something from it.
Understand, but you do understand that paragraph is nothing more than a restatement of paragraph 2.
Well, it's in addition.
It says the same thing, both of them. And that's just my opinion, but it does, it says the same thing.
Take a vote.
We're not in this business to kill trees,
Well, we certainly killed a lot of trees
create more paper.
where we got all these red lines. So we made a lot of,
Take it
Wait,
up 80%.
yeah, we moved a lot of red lines out.
Yep.
Okay. So am I keeping that paragraph or am I?
Should we take a vote on it?
Yeah. That's
All right, somebody make a motion.
that we include that paragraph within the body of the second paragraph.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Garcia, seconded by Commissioner Robbins. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion is defeated 4-3.
What makes democracy work, right?
All right, sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry.
Shall we move on, Miss Amy?
Yes. Okay.
Moving right along.
So this is the only goal of this chapter, to maintain the urban village character and scenic resources of the community. You guys have heard my kind of spiel as it relates to what does urban village mean? So my first question, rather than kind of getting into how do we define that, is can we just take urban village out and have the goal read, maintain the character and scenic resources of the community?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That was
Just take out the word village and leave an urban character. Or we're taking out urban and. But we're not really an urban city. We're a suburban city.
So why are we calling it urban design?
We are not urban.
And therefore, what's the,
Okay.
what's?
That's
for
just,
urban design?
that's an opinion.
I disagree. This is an urban environment. Okay. We're not the suburb. The question is whether or not we remove the 2 words and just maintain the character.
To be fair, the word urban is in the chapter title, so.
Exactly.
No, no big deal then.
Okay, so just remove the word village? I don't,
Just take
I don't think
village,
that
yeah.
we need to define the word urban, but if we use the word urban village character, that is something that, so.
I take village, I think I agree, take village out.
Okay. That was a lot easier
I
than
think
I.
we're all in agreement. All right.
So, the only other one I wanted to kind of point out is down here on, the policy 3. You'll see that we are removing 2 of the instances that we say we would require, design review for. Because both of those essentially would result in us doing, design review for single-family homes, which we don't do now, and we have been advised against doing. And I think the, design review committee would also agree that we should not be doing design review on every single-family home.
The other thing I do want to point out is that the concept of planned unit development is no longer something that anybody uses. It's too complicated of a process. It's too long of a process. This has gone by the wayside. We don't need it. We don't need it here in the city, and it's not something that's been used in a very long time. Everything that has been developed really since incorporation has been part of either a regular subdivision or a specific area plan. And the specific area plan kind of supplants the need for a planned unit development. So I did want to point that out because that is something that we will be proposing in development code to just get rid of that.
Anything else on this page before I move on?
Okay. Moving on.
Moving on. So on page 5, I wanted to direct you guys down to policy 10. Areas of special interest, including entry points, landmarks, scenic views shall receive appropriate treatment, whether part of public or private development proposals. I am not sure what appropriate treatment means. Or what that would look like, and we would definitely need to designate what those areas of special interest or scenic views would be before we could then apply any kind of additional standards to them. So staff is proposing to delete this particular policy.
It's also a shall statement, so it's a shall statement that we have no idea what it means.
I'm okay with getting rid of it.
Getting rid of appropriate treatment.
No, I think.
Get rid of the policy.
Get rid of the
Policy.
entire policy.
Yeah.
I agree.
It doesn't.
I would agree.
Okay.
apply.
Any other discussion?
Not on that item.
Okay,
So down, the next one that I wanted to draw your attention to is down here at policy 12. This one was another shall statement that we changed to encourage to kind of provide a little bit of flexibility based on what the developer is looking to do and what's available to them. Another thing I wanted to point out is the site sensitive architecture. Throughout the chapter, there's kind of a theme of wanting things to be, and I think I understand why within context. And so but there's certain things that almost are asking us to develop or apply certain design standards to development based on what's happening around them, which is difficult to do outside of what we already have with our design standards per zone. I don't know that we really want to get into, okay, a new building wants to go in. So because the buildings around you look a certain way, your building has to look a certain way.
It becomes very subjective, number one, and number two, again, one of the things that's problematic is if the building that's next door to you is really ugly, are you bound to build another really ugly building?
It's just providing consistency through our development code so people know what's expected of them when they go to develop things, and that makes it very difficult to do that. So, are there any feedback or comments on this page before we move on?
Can you explain number 9?
Prohibit construction of new video.
So actually, this has already been incorporated into our code. The only place we allow, basically electronically changeable signs are for the schools or the city public facilities. And
So
On the-
like a little monument out here? Okay,
and
why?
and along the I-90 corridor. Why?
Oh, so it is allowed along the corridor.
It is allowed along the I-90 corridor.
Okay,
So those are the special circumstances.
you answered my question.
One question on number 5. You're saying and I really appreciate your side notes here. It really helps answer many questions previously, so thank you. But it talks about identify the species of trees, but don't we have I know this body worked many meetings to talk about our tree policy.
Yes.
So can you not just refer to another policy within this policy?
So this is more pointing to our development code, and one of the things that again, when we were working on our street tree ordinance, one of the things we were working with a state arborist who recommended that we not include a list of tree species. Because it tends to, the species availability tends to change over time, and what's appropriate changes over time. And we're finding this specifically with increasing heat, that trees that used to be resilient in our environment are not anymore.
Didn't we go through that list and scrub it though?
We scrubbed it, we gave some examples, but now what they're suggesting is that now that we have an urban forester, we didn't have the in-house expertise to kind of constantly be updating and reviewing. And he certainly has the ability to provide some suggested lists to try and promote that biodiversity and the resiliency of our urban forest, and we can do a better job. We have a tendency, we have overplanted a lot of species. And that's not a good thing. And we saw that back east when the Dutch elm disease went through, and we're seeing it now with certain species that linden trees are not doing so well in this environment any longer. And so as we see changes in our climate going on, the best trees for our environment may change over time. And so having the ability to do that through the urban forester and whatnot.
So Dan's gonna take a look at this and give us suggestions.
Yes,
That's-
and again, it's more consistent, it'll be more consistent with some of the goals that we saw on the related to urban forestry in the GHG thing.
So I guess my specific question is, are you looking to identify those specific species? Or are you just going to refer to another document that you can change at will?
We could very much do it as a policy and refer to a policy.
And then
We-
Dan
we
can
could-
rework
One of
the
the things
document.
that,
Because then we have all that information
Right.
in one place.
Yes.
and it would make sense with street trees, we do have, right now it's consistent between the development code and our engineering design standards. When we update our engineering design standards, we're going to be updating them in a way that we can in the future just do it by resolution rather than ordinance. And so that would be a great way to do that. So that is a great suggestion. But for our purposes here, this is just a goal and policy related to how we operate the city. It's not talking about the mechanism by which we necessarily do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to page 6. So, policy 17, so this is a little bit confusing. What is the old title of urban design policy 17 is redundant of policy 25. So I'm proposing that we remove one of them, and this was the first one that came up on the list. And then policy 18 is also redundant of policy 1 and policy 19. So I'm proposing that we remove both of them. Any comments or feedback? most of these edits are, well, all of these edits are really just for clarification, to kind of clarify the things that we're either already doing or are planning to do. One note that I do want to make is down on policy 20, where we've changed it to say maintain specific design standards for private development that occurs adjacent to designated aesthetic corridors and boulevards. I would propose that we edit my edit and remove the word private, because public projects would also be beholden to those standards if they are adjacent to a designated corridor or boulevard.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any comments or feedback on that page?
No, ma'am.
All right. So on page 8, so the big question here is on urban number 22. We say maintain the following routes as boulevards with monument signage. As far as what I know, there is a monument sign at Harvard Road, but there is not a monument sign at Country Vista or Appleway. So if that is something that we are interested in keeping, then those are things that we should probably add to our capital facilities plan as future projects.
I have a question, Lisa. We have a really dandy city sign that's in the shadow of the new freeway overpass.
It's not a city sign, that's Liberty Lake Corporate Park sign. It's the,
Is that gonna be moved? Is that gonna be?
it's not our sign. It's the Corporate Park sign.
It's a Liberty City.
It, no, it says Liberty Lake Corporate Park.
That's the corporate part.
And
They
they,
don't
and
ever
they
get-
knew that that was gonna happen when we built this. We certainly gave them the opportunity to do it. They didn't, they being the, well, it's Himley and Haygood, managed that, corporate park, but
It's been there for ages.
since 1996.
I know, yeah.
So, yeah.
They can deal with it.
That's dumb.
It costs them too much to move it in.
I think that's what it is more than anything else, yeah.
So are we
So Amy, on the monument signs,
Are
is
we-
this,
wanting to keep this?
Take it out.
First, but city monument signs, this is a
Yeah.
question. And so I think that it hasn't been on our capital facilities plan for like many moons. It was taken off a while ago.
and our new sign, and our new sign code should cover all this.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's calling for something that is kind of old school anyhow.
That's why I didn't ask.
Do you want to get rid of 22?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that what,
I'm sorry?
is that the way the wind's blowing here? Get rid of it altogether?
It doesn't mean that we can't do it, but that would be just, it's not.
I'm in favor of it. I'm just asking the question so we can check it
Our
out.
new sign code's going to cover all this.
Roger, Roger.
So this is where we get into a lot of red lines.
Again, there's a lot of creative writing in this chapter.
There was a lot of extra things. So,
So that some of this was, I swear this hasn't changed since this was originally written. This was copied from Spokane Comprehensive Plan, the original one.
Lisa, what you just said?
This was copied from the City of Spokane Comprehensive Plan, the original. one.
Cut and paste.
Honey, the honey.
Awani.
Awani?
Awani.
Awani principles?
Yes.
I think I would just leave that Awani print, just to mess with people.
I'm not sure how many people actually read that, but, okay, so I'm not hearing any objections to removing that.
No. No.
Excellent. So this was kind of a similar situation. So at the top, you'll see that's just the continuation of those principles. The natural systems and basic strategy was just kind of a, again, a rewrite, trying to keep the intent of what they're trying to say. overall, the approach is a balance and an integration of the built and natural environment. That's essentially what my takeaway was from the urban design goals that we're looking to achieve. The stuff underneath was a lot of the things that were making me ask, what does this mean? And why is this here? So again, I won't read it all to you, but does anybody have any comments or feedback on what I'm proposing? Again, more kind of question marks about what things mean and what we're trying to say with them. There's a lot of words. Does anyone have any comments or feedback on this page?
Which page is that?
So it's page 11. The first heading is placemaking. Everyone's very well said.
On that, turn over.
Yeah, okay, I know which one. I have no comment.
Did all this come from the same document? This placemaking nonsense?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Harmony and disharmony.
That one was a good.
I'm sorry?
Harmony and disharmony.
Yeah, I don't know, I, creative writing exercise.
So I'm not hearing
Some names.
any feedback or comments on that one. So what we did here was kind of update this list for what we actually, the criteria that we actually look at when we're doing design review. And then down at the bottom, the site analysis was again, kind of trying to get into that designing for the context kind of situation. And a lot of what's in there would really be kind of up to I would think would be up to the development team and their design team to figure out how best to use their site. Is there any comments or feedback on that page?
So we're getting short on time. Do we need to extend the meeting?
Absolutely not.
Can't.
All right. And my question is, can we kind of go through the rest of this and see if anybody has any comments, the remainder, rather than her having to go page by page?
Ooh, the lightning round. I love
I'm
it.
happy to do that. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of this is just cleaning up extra
Yeah, I
words.
can see that. And let me tell you, Amy, you did an excellent job here. I know this was a lot of work. I really appreciate it. And the way you've got it presented is excellent. Thank you.
So then I'm gonna,
Anyone have any issues with the remainder? Well, thank you, everyone.
That was truly the lightning round.
So we are done with urban red lines and revisions. Citizen comments. We have no one present. Is there anyone online, Evan? No one online? Secretary's report, quick and
Just
dirty?
quickly, meeting is
Short and
July 9th,
sweet.
and we will be looking at resiliency sub-element goals and policies and employment projections. And again, we have ongoing engagement. Sign code, I've gotten great results on our sign code survey. We have 57 people so far. If you know business owners or community members that have an interest in this, please help us push out that survey. That right now I'm shocked that we had that many people respond. I'm ecstatic about it. The other thing.
Very well worded.
I'm sorry?
It was very well worded.
The other thing that we have going on right now, again, the Parks Plan Survey, and they're gonna be pushing that out. They're gonna get some signs with QR codes in all the parks, and I think that's really gonna generate a lot of response on that, but they're doing well with it. We're getting good feedback on that also. We will be starting our virtual open house engagement with the story map for climate and resiliency. I think mid-July. That's when it starts.
Participation in the first one.
I know.
They had hate.
Yeah. And that's all I got for you.
All right. Planning Commission reports, any reports, commissioners? How many of you have been, worked the booths at the farmer's market? I highly recommend it. I met two people that just moved here, two different couples. One was an older couple that moved here from Bellingham, and they called it the dark side. So they were glad to be here. And the other couple moved here from Texas, a young couple with two children, and they just arrived last Thursday. And they were at the farmer's market, and they were so excited about everything that's going on in this city. They said they'd never seen anything like this. So that was really an eye opener for me. So I urge you, get out there among our citizens and talk to them. It's well worth your time.
And I am still looking for volunteers for Barefoot in the Park. If anybody, I've got a couple in the morning, but it's crickets in the afternoon. There's gonna be a lot of. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that we'll have community engagement folks. They're also having their own booth, so I might. August 2nd.
August 2nd.
All right, any other thing for good for the order? I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Jinks, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Garcia, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.